What's up, freaks? This is just me, and today we're gonna be taking a look at the best hamstrings in the rear poses. It's mostly gonna be the back double biceps and the rear lat spread, or any back shot. This comparison is gonna include pictures where the bodybuilders are consciously showing at least one of the hamstrings. Of course, it's not fair to have non-flexed photos of their hams there, so I'm trying to be fair here, of course, and we're only focused on the certain muscle group, so in this case the hamstrings, not the whole poses. And we're gonna have the list in increasing order. For the absolute cream of the crop, you're gonna have to wait till the end of the video. For the record though, the order is obviously just how I see it and can be flip-flopped based on your preference and subjective opinion. We're starting off with a one-time Mr. Olympia, Sean Roden, a 2010 guy, probably a current competitor still, maybe. He does have a pretty decent, impressive set of hams in the rear poses. Not the most shredded, not the most separated, but he has a spot on my list anyway. And here I want to mention someone who hasn't really proved themselves yet, a current sensation, Nick Walker. If he comes conditioned again, maybe to the Olympia, he could bring one of the best sets of shredded, waterless hamstrings in the history of bodybuilding, in my opinion. He has a huge potential. Good hamstrings already at this point. You can't argue that on Nick Walker. So props for that. Now a 90s bodybuilder, Sonny Schmidt. Very underrated in my opinion. He's got nice hamstrings details, at least from what we can see in these pictures, because the pics on the back poses were scarce for Sonny, which is too bad. Anyway, you can make an idea from this. Looks really good. Now, this is a very unique, how to describe it, an interesting set of hamstring on a current competitor, Lucas Oslido. That's what people call him. The proper way to say it is Lukasz Oslido, but whatever. Lucas's hamstring development is undeniably very good and standout, and his hams are so long and all, but the reason why he places so low is his posing. In my opinion, he doesn't do himself any service by pushing up his glutes like this. I don't like it whatsoever. But I have him on here because his hamstrings are dry and nicely separated, and they catch your eye. And this is Caprice Murray, a pretty unknown guy from the 2010s, I believe. He's probably a one-trick wonder pony with only 2 usable rear pictures I was able to find, but he's got respectable hams anyway. So I'm just mentioning him, that's it. Looks good. Next, a guy coming from the 2010s competing still up to this day. That's of course the beast, Roly Winkler. His lower body overall from the rear is not so great, honestly, could be better. But take a look at the hams. As long as he comes conditioned, Roly displays truly very decent hamstrings, separated and things like that. We have another guy from the current bodybuilding lineups. It's Steve Kuclo. Steve has some pretty good hamstrings, mainly because he's really conditioned, so the hams look shredded to the whatever. No water. There's whatsoever, it seems like. Good commendable hamstrings on Steve. He hasn't really proved himself as much as some of the other guys, but his hams, in my opinion, look very good. And it's not like he's a newcomer. Anyway, he's a 90s and even 2000s bodybuilder, Kevin Levrone. Now again, Kevin's lower body in the back poses is not world class. It's honestly not matching his upper body, but he's got some pretty shredded diced hamstrings. Most of the time they look good, so that in my mind justifies the inclusion of the Maryland muscle machine. But here's a current competitor, Justin Compton. If he comes conditioned, he's got some very commendable hams, dialed in and deeply cut. They're very useful in his rear poses. They complete them very well. They go really well with the rest of his body, in my opinion. I sure want to include Justin Compton on the list here for this reason. And we have another entry. This is the marvelous Melvin Anthony from the 2000s this time. Again, the legs, nothing special, but when we focus our attention on the hamstring muscles, they look pretty diced, and definitely they are a highlight in his rear poses. The conqueror William Bonac, a current competitor with very good lower body from the rear for a change. The highlight are probably more of his glutes than his hams, but examine, and you're gonna see that he's really diced and shredded and dried out in the hamstrings too. That's why I included him, because of the sheer quality of the muscle in the hams. Here's a guy from the 2010s, Ben Pakulski, who was known for his lower body, and he's got awesome definition in his hams. Not a standout feature, because his glutes and calves are on the same level, if not even better. But we gotta mention him because, as you can see, he looks really impressive, and he was even pretty consistent with it, I would say. Next on the list is Aaron Baker, who competed in the 90s. I wasn't able to find many pictures of Aaron in the rear poses, but I still think he's impressive from what I've seen of him. From what you can see displayed, that's all I could find. His arms have the detail and are conditioned enough in my eyes, at least. So I wanted to include him. Next is Mike Marazzo, who's another 90s talent. The main reason this man doesn't place even higher is simply the lack of good pictures, but let me tell you, he's incredible. Dry, shredded hamstrings. He was known for his arms and calves, but his hands deserve a mention on a list such as this one, definitely. I find these hamstrings looks actually very pleasing, even, they're not too shredded, they're maintaining a nice shape. I do really like them personally. But yes, I do go on. Here we got a guy called Paco Batista, I believe. He's from the 2000s. He's not the most well-known person on the list. And honestly, I had some trouble finding decent pictures, but I did in the end, and I did include him because his hams are just very impressive. Not the driest, but well developed, you can see that. And well defined, even though he's holding some water, I would say. It's still visible through. And I'm making you familiar with Paco Francisco Batista if you haven't heard of him before. So now that's enough. Move on. And here from the 90s comes in the next entry Charles Claremont, a very aesthetic guy. And take a look at these hamstrings. True, they're not sliced to the bone in this region. They're not completely dried out like with some of the others, but otherwise they're awesome. They stand out a lot. It's very good, but not the best picks, I gotta say, for Charles. Move on to another bodybuilder from the 90s plus 2000s, and that's the blonde myth, Libras. He certainly wasn't known for his hamstrings, and once again, it looks like he's holding some water in that body part. You can tell it's not shredded. Plus, I gotta admit, his hams are kind of short, if you get what I'm saying. That's probably because he's a shorter guy. So yes, he is not without his flaws. But the hams have some very nice grooves separated, and they catch your eye quite a bit, I would say. At least my eye. Don't sleep on Libras. He's very good, actually. But we're moving on. Tom Prince, competing shortly in the 90s and 2000s. He was known for having some unbelievable hams from the side, and even in the rear poses, they're really good. They have impressive details, and they're certainly well developed. That's undeniable, you can tell. Tom Prince is kind of a lesser known bodybuilder, so definitely take note of him if you haven't heard of him before, which is possible. But here's Alex Fedorov. He's from the 2000 era. Honestly, he's more of a one-hit wonder with only a few good photos. But I have to include him on the list because he looks, again, how much definition He's dry, and he's also blessed in this area because his arms are really long, which I would say it's favorable genetics. Alexander is a great force in the rear poses downstairs. Look at that. Looks very good. Now, Dennis Wolfe gets mentioned in this video as well. This big bad wolf stream rose in from the 20s and 2010s with awesome hamstring development. I like them because they have nice grooves and they're one of the highlights of his physique seen from the back. Dennis is pretty sliced, not to the bone, but conditioned enough, and he has these impressive grooves in the hamstrings. Next, we have a forgotten bodybuilder for some reason. His name is Byto abbaspor. Hope I'm pronouncing that decently correct. Probably not. This guy was competing in the 2010s and unfortunately not with us anymore. So I hope he's resting in peace. But he might be still training, I guess, wherever he is. Maybe he's still bodybuilding. Anyway, these hams are very dry and these are awesome separated hams too. Definitely suits his physique well, and I like the hamstring development of Byto a lot. Look how shredded they are. But let's move on. Next is Sean Ray, of course from the 90s, and I gotta admit he really surprised me. I didn't expect this aesthetic sensation to be able to display such awesome detail in the hamstrings. The grooves Sean has put him handily on my list. Look at that. The hamstrings look great. Not the most surface area of all guys. You know, not the tallest hamstrings, if I can say that, but very wide. So sorry, it's hard to explain. Anyway, there's so much definition and separation. Definitely warrants him an inclusion. And we're getting to the top 5. Here's the 5th place finisher. We're only gonna be looking at 4 more guys. We have some real dried out, shredded, to the bone hamstrings from a competitor from the 20s and 2010s. And guess what? It's Branch Warren. Some of the greatest lower body developments in bodybuilding history. And this is 4th place, and we have Kai Green, 2000s, 2010s. Some of the best lower body developments of all time, just as I was saying with Branch, and it's including the hams. Now, with Kai, they don't stand out so much because they're not outright better than his glutes or calves. Either way, nonetheless, Kai Green is the predator, always has rivaled Philly's hamstrings. He's of course conditioned, very dry. He has the grooves, and it's impressive, very impressive for the predator. So you definitely can't argue. His hamstrings are very good. In 3rd, this is 90s mass monster, Nasser El Somebody, who has very standout hamstrings. His glutes look really soft compared to the shredded hams with the lines and grooves. That's the reason why Nasser places so high on the list. It's just the highlight of his physique. He was decently consistent with his hamstrings, unless he was totally off. The hams always looked shredded. The one hamstring he's displaying has a nice shape, and his limbs are long, so there's a lot of space for the hamstring to occupy. It's an awesome body part for Nasser. He's always, in my opinion, beat Dorian Yates in that. And moving on to the runner-up, I was having a bit of trouble deciding who should take runner-up and who should take the victory, but ultimately I'm going with the King Ronnie Coleman in the 2nd place finish. He's an 8-time Metro, an absolute legend from the 90s and 2000s. He's got insane dryness and conditioning in the hamstrings, but also his glutes. And the reason he just missed out of the 1st place is that it's not the hams dominating his lower body, but the huge butterfly-shaped glutes. This lower body, at least upward from the knee that is probably the best of all time if you ask me. However, back to the hamstrings of Ronnie. As I said, shredded and cut big and unbelievable. There's only one person that can beat him in this region, in my opinion, and that's still only arguable, it has to be said. But that's our winner. The gift Phil Heath takes the number one spot here. From the 2000s, he competed up to last year, 2020, and he managed to get 7 standouts while doing so. His lower body from the back might not be as dominant as Ronnie's or Kai's, but the hamstrings on their own surpass them, I think, because they're just a standout. Look at the insane dryness, they're peeled, just like his glutes. He's also complete. He's got awesome glutes, but they don't overwhelm his hams. He's got the balance of the lower body, he's got the shape. The groove is so deep it's retarded. The hams really fit well into his back shots. He's got one of the best sets of hams of all time. You cannot argue that at all. You would have no possible argument. So in the end, what do you got on your mind about this video? Did you like and enjoy it? I hope so. It was interesting making this list for me, for sure. Do you agree with my picks for number 1 and 2, or do you like someone else and do you think they can beat my Victor? Or did I omit anyone completely? Remind me of them in the comment section, please. So let us all know down in the comment section below. It would be great of you. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to watch some best hamstring videos and also like and subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your day.